Welcome, Season Sixers. As always, thank you for being part of our Color Success podcast family. I'm your favorite host, Dr. Stephanie J. Wong. Keep your eyes peeled for my brand new book coming out. It's called Cancel the Filter, where I share my experiences in the realm of mental health, both professionally and personally. Subscribe to colorsuccesspodcast.com to be on our waiting list. Seats are limited and being filled as we speak. We're also streaming on all your favorite platforms and socials. Whether you're on the go or comfy on the couch, you can tune in at your own comfort. As you know, we love growing discussions with our guests from our AAPI and minority communities. With so many friends and experts from different aspects of life, we love learning their stories and understanding what their success means to them. Let's get into it. I am so happy to welcome Cordell Carter. We've been on a little break since the holiday, and he will be the first episode that we'll release since then. So let me tell you about this amazing person. Cordell brings more than 20 years to his pursuit of a society and organizational cultures where everyone belongs and has equitable opportunities to thrive. He's currently the executive director of the Aspen Institute Socrates Program, a global education forum, and the founding director of the Aspen Institute's Project on Belonging. Finally, Cordell founded the Festival of the Diaspora, a Medellin, Colombia-based convener of diaspora communities across the Americas. Before his current roles, Cordell held leadership roles with the TechTown Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Seattle Public Schools, Business Roundtable, National Alliance for Public Charter Schools, and the IBM Corporation. Cordell, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So, aside from the impressive resume, you have my heart at the lavender. He's wearing lavender, people. So, we're vibing already. So, I wanted to start off with a very easy question. I'm joking. What does belonging mean to you?
Belonging is both a feeling and expectation. When I say feeling, I think back to my time being a military kid and having to change schools quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And there are some places you go where, there's a vibe in the room and, someone is it and it's you, right? And then there's other places where you just feel people are open. They're saying hello, hi, I see that you're new. They're accustomed to people coming in new to the organization. They can't wait to see how you fit. But when I say expectation, it is an executive level conversation. Mm-hmm. Your leader should be saying, it is my expectation that this is going to be an organization where everyone belongs and should enjoy equitable opportunities to thrive. And it's on the organization to make sure the thriving part happens. But you belong because your leader said that you belong. Mm. And he or she shows it in the way they interact and their consistency in saying it over and over again.
I like that you said a feeling because it is hard to explain, and we'll get into that, but the belonging piece of you just have that feeling that this person gets it. This person is welcoming, and it's not just lip service to say, hey, let's do an onboarding orientation. It's, hey, let me introduce you to some people. Let me use the titles that you prefer. There's so many cultural nuances that we can unpack here. But one thing that I heard recently that was quite painful to hear was someone say, we are in a DEI space, okay? And I don't know about you and me, but, that's our lives every day, okay? And so this idea of equity, I'm wondering if you can kind of unpack it for us, because I think there's a lot of buzzwords out there. There's a lot of, I would say, misperceptions or misinformation. And on the heels of the Elon Musk and Mark Cuban tweets back and forth about what DEI is and, how to implement it in organizations, help me understand, or help the audience understand from your perspective about equity.
So here's the deal. I literally was having this conversation today at Aspen. I was talking about belonging and where it fits. DE&I, as we know it, really started during the Nixon administration. And his question was really simple. Who works for the companies that work for the federal government? right? It wasn't a required questionnaire, but people assume that the federal government, which is the largest purchasers of goods and services, more than 1/5 our GDP, if they're asking the question, it's important to them. And so then they started to have to keep track of it. Why? Because procurement officers were asking them for it as part of this executive order. Now, it became a whole industry in and of itself. A strategy essentially became the main thing without having an outcome. You're like, we're on a path, we're going somewhere, but where are we going? We don't know. So I'm not surprised that there's so much animus around D&I, that people have reflexively negative reaction. Now, we also have to admit, knowing what we know about the good facts and the bad facts of a country, there's some people, even if this was the second coming of a deity, they would hate it because they're racist or they're anti-women, they're whatever. There's nothing you can do about that. And I'm saying, in your own time, be racist, be misogynist, all you want. Once you're in public, once you're working with someone else, you got to act different, my friend.
I like that. I like that. I got to use that one day.
Yeah, but at home, be Archie Bunker at home. But when you're in public, you behave differently. So the way I see belonging is expectation that the organization's leaders set out for everyone. It is a job of talent management to execute on the thriving part. So he or she can say I belong all I want, but if I don't feel like my ideas are being welcome, if I don't see a path of acceptance and inclusion for myself and frankly career advancement, I know I don't belong because I can't thrive. So it is a job of the folks that execute on the strategy set forth and the vision set forth by the CEO to do DE&I, because that's the actual work of belonging. So I'm not arguing for an eraser of either. I'm just saying this sequence is all wrong. Belonging is the destination, and we make DE&I the strategy to get to destination, the whole thing. And it's wrong. It's not. So we have to go put the right cover on top of it. Therefore, it would make sense to everyone.
That's really well said, and I'm better able to understand kind of and follow that, and I'm sure a lot of folks will when it's explained in that way, because I think one of the arguments was, how do you define it, and then how do you implement the strategy? So thinking about the way your framework, how would you advise, or rather guide leaders to really think about execution, or how it would be implemented? Because that's the other part, right? Okay, even if people agree that we should execute the strategy, what does it even look like?
Yeah, I think you start with P&L. In my mind, if it's not attached to the profit and loss of the organization, if this is not driving revenue, it is nice to have until it's not nice to be had. So start at like, what is my objective from a profit and loss standpoint? Okay, what am I selling? Who are my customers? What are my customers saying? What are my customers' expectations, right? So the real basis of listen to the customers and work your way back to what is the strategy we're going to implement as an organization to get us to that outcome. And so in my mind, that connects it directly to the work. So no one in the organization can argue this is a political thing. This is corporate wokeness. We're just doing this because it's the thing to do. No, this is driving revenue. I started my career with IBM 23 years ago. And I remember doing our month-long onboarding. I mean, they sent us to IBM University. Okay, they weren't messing around. They wanted you to know the IBM way. And it's a good reason the company's around for almost 200 years, right? They invest in onboarding and retention. And so they said, we don't know when we hired the first Black salesman because we've always listened to our customer. And so if we're selling in a neighborhood of Black businesses, guess what? The salesman reflected the customers. So we have no idea when it happened. We just said we've always had Black salesmen. We've always had women salesmen, And so I always appreciated that approach because it was focused on the business. And I think far too many of our corporate leaders are interested in being in public personalities. That's not driving revenue, maybe personal branding. But let's get back to the basics. If you get back to the basics, P&L, everything else will make sense. So when I think about how you implement a culture of belonging in an organization, everything starts at revenue and you work your way backwards. And so you'll go through the strategic process the opposite way. Typically you start here at, our what is our vision, our mission, our goals, and then you work your way down to your metrics. No, the other way. Go the other way. especially for established organizations. And so that is typically what I suggest. And one of the big challenges that people have in this space is how do I measure? Okay, fine, I agree. Let's connect it to P&L. How do I do that? You have to be willing to stop what you're doing and just start over and do that. And that is hard to do. The vast majority, I did a documentary on this called The Road Trip to Belonging back in 2021. And I was talking to some Fortune 10 companies that had SVPs for diversity, equity, and belonging. One company in particular, the nation's largest employer, they had been at it since 2006. They said, as the nation's largest employer, we're a microcosm for the nation. If we can't figure out how to make people feel like they belong, then the country can't figure it out. Mm. So do you think they went and hired an HR leader to be the head of diversity? No, they went and got their CIO, an engineer, someone who understands how to fix systems, because the brain is a system. Organization is a living organism. Mm-hmm. They said, rewire our brains. And over the course of, at that time, it was 15 years, that's exactly what they set about doing at their own pace. And when these things would flare up around the country, be it George Floyd in particular, this particular organization, you would expect a lot of noise from the employees. It wasn't there. They had already rewired themselves. They took that systematic approach. They stopped what they were doing and started over. Mm-hmm. And that's what organizations have to do. You have to be willing to stop. And what they told me, what that gentleman told me, he's now retired, so I won't call his name out. He said 75% of my peers in this space, in the D&I space, got their jobs after George Floyd was killed. He was killed on Memorial Day, right? No, that weekend, I'm sorry. That was maybe, call it a Saturday. On Monday, many companies had their highest ranked person of color, be they marketing, tech, whatever, they became chief diversity, equity, inclusion officer. Often there was no budget, no plan, no team, no strategy. But you're it because we need someone on that corporate webpage reporting to the CEO. How do you expect anything to be successful when you do it that way? Mm-hmm. So it was a very, I would say, poorly intended, almost cynical thing. And we just have to be better as organizations and better as just humans. What an awful thing to do to someone, to put them in that position.
Yeah, I was going to say the burden tends to fall on minorities to fill that gap, right? Whether it's called DEI, D&I, all these taglines. And so, I that's where I wanted to go next was there's a lot of people who say that they're DEI experts. And while I think lived experience, yeah, we both laugh. While we have lived experiences as minorities, there are qualities, there are qualifications that can really be helpful to place someone in that kind of a strategic role and not just a poster person for an organization.
Yeah, it's funny. I smiled when you said people would think they're experts, because when my CEO asked me literally the week after January 6, 2021, to help Aspen build out an external D&I program, I said, oh, I'll help you find a D&I expert. I'm not an expert. I've never covered these issues in my life. In fact, I purposely avoided these issues my entire career because often I was the only brown person in my space. So I'm like, I'm not going to be the only Black dude and your diversity guy. No. Okay. But he said the following to me: you're an expert in our organization. Every organization has quirks. You know my quirks. So I want it to be successful. So I need you to help us. I said, okay, that I understand. So as I got on my intellectual journey, I started talking to people that were the quote unquote experts. What I found, there was a lot of noise in the space.
Yes.
A lot of noise. And frankly, I didn't want to have a conversation about current state. I want to have a conversation and convenings around where the conversation should be going. There's normative critique on the national dialogue. And so, pardon me, that's how I end up at Belonging. But to your question of what qualifies a person, the big reason that we're even engaged in conversations about belonging and diversity, equity, inclusion is retention. It is cheaper to keep them, right? Most people have no problem hiring. The problem is in keeping folks. It is the average cost of replacing an FTE at a mid-sized organization is $66,000. When you're looking to replace a very senior person that was driving a lot of revenue, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. Can you imagine doing that 5 times a year? I had to change my own leadership style 5 years ago because found myself having to hire every year. I was wearing people out. And I said, I don't want to spend half a year interviewing. I just can't do that. It's not fun. And if I am not shepherding and curating an upwardly mobile professional experience for the people that purposely avail themselves to me as a leader, why am I even doing this? Who would want to live like that? Right. And so I had to change because I wanted to keep them. And so that is why people are engaged. This is why it's important. Because organizations are much more efficient. They earn much more profit by keeping the employees they have. And so you want to create an environment where people feel comfortable, where they have friends, where they feel valued. That's what belonging is about. It's not about some political objective. This is about P&L, friends. And to folks who don't understand that are really the ones after the political agenda.
Yeah, I think retention, and I'll add, of quality employees, because I mean, there's some people that they got to go.
Public sector. Woo!
Yeah. So, I mean, and I will say, this is not the government's view. These are Cordell and my opinion. So please,
Absolutely.
not related, because I have very talented staff in my team. So
I have great folks, and the average tenure is 4 years right now, by the way. So
yeah, I think. I mean, I have a smaller team in the government, but like, let's go into that though, because there's a lot of folks that'll weaponize DEI as a political agenda. And there's a lot of opposing views, obviously. So how do we work within that context where, yes, people do believe that. And sometimes it almost feels like you have to sell the importance of DEI. And I know you said bring it back to revenue, but some people will say, well, it doesn't matter what, ethnicity or identity people are from. Like, it's been working. We're making money. But how do you navigate opposing viewpoints like that?
Well, I like to respond with facts. The fact of the matter is we have massive demographic change afoot in this country, in fact, in the entire Western world. And that's completely natural. Completely natural. Just look at the numbers. The last majority white high school graduating class in the United States of America will be 2025. What is the year now? 2024. Okay. And so we can stop talking about the D. That is self-evident. We are a diverse country. Okay. The real question is E&I. And at the end of the day, you need companies to be successful because that's important for our national stature. I have never experienced life as an American, and I am 48 years old, when we were not a hegemon. I don't know what it's like to travel, and that blue passport that I carry so proudly is not a powerful tool for me. Okay? I don't want to live in a world in which we've let our differences and fear of change actually befuddle the strength that we have. Our superpower is our diversity.
Yes.
Okay. I understand. I mean, put yourself in the mind of a middle-aged white male who's looking, he's in a senior role. What do I say senior role? 70%, 76% of executives in this country, regardless of sector, are white men. So again, self-evident. All right. And so put yourself there. You're standing on a platform, you're looking out on staff, and you see very few people who look like you. And the ones who look like you are the same age as you. So you're like, who's going to follow? Meanwhile, I am being asked to champion this thing called D&I, where I don't feel accepted, where I don't feel like I belong. I'm being forced to be the executive sponsor. Do you think I would do that in good faith? You think I would do that with joy? Of course not. So that is why I don't even use the term D&I, because I know it offends the executive class that I need to support. I need their support. Okay. And so we got to figure out a way that everyone feels like they belong, even if they can't replicate themselves. That's the challenge.
Yeah.
We can talk about whether it's right or it's wrong. It is what it is. That's how humans behave. And we have to acknowledge the humanity in this. No one wants to feel like they're the last of their kind. That's just not our biological prerogatives. That's not how we function. Like we have a reflexively negative reaction to that. We're going to fight that. Now, in the political realm, and I know we're not politics, but it's a little more pernicious because you're talking about I have the power to make policy to affect people's lives, to secure wealth for people only look like me, the only people that I want to support. That's very, very different. Okay. I'm just talking about in the business sense. I understand the sentiment. I absolutely do. I think it's unacceptable when you're a public official, but when you're a business person, I get it. But that is something we can solve. I can't solve for the people that have bad intent and are in public office.
Right.
I just need those dinosaurs to die. And they are. Okay.
Like I said,
Yeah.
you're amazing. You and I don't mince words like that. So, and that's the thing. Let's shift a little focus, not to get into the political realm, but more so, how do we support underserved communities, underrepresented individuals who don't have access to even be in a company, a Fortune 500 company, because it is so hard to even make it through school, put food on the table and things like that. So, I mean, what can we do to increase opportunities? And I know one of your your expertise is leveraging tech to be able to help underserved populations. So what are your thoughts on that?
There's a lot of genius that we all have. Those of us that are on the upper echelon of the Maslow's, pyramid,
Hierarchy of needs.
yeah, we're living and thriving. Where it's like, how do I thrive more? The brain just works differently. We have to get people past survival because when you're
Yes.
surviving, where you really with everything around you is uncertain, the first thing you lose is trust. Okay, so I don't need to tell you that you're poor or that you're underserved or you're disadvantaged because everywhere you look, that's what you see.
Yes.
So I shouldn't be surprised when I come to your community with some great evidence-based solution and you're like, well, how long is this money going to flow? Well, actually, you have to do this to get it. No, 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 no. I need the cookie now. No one's going to pass the cookie test in a survival game, right?
Yes.
And so you have to close the trust gap first. We're not just dealing with people that are poor in their pockets. They're poor in spirit too. Their hearts are broken.
True. Yeah.
Their hearts are broken. They don't believe in the American dream. It's a nightmare to them. Okay, so what interest do they have in preserving a system that benefits you? Because you're winning and they're not. So maybe I will knock your window out of your car just to bring you down a peg. Maybe I'll knock you over your head. Maybe I will not learn today in school. I'm gonna throw something out the window because I haven't eaten all week. And the only meal I'm gonna get is this lunch today at school and no one else cares. So we gotta kind of take a big step back. And this is my big aha. I worked at big foundations and the whole nine.
Yes.
And, doing this belonging work, I want to do grass tops and grassroots. So at the Aspen stuff, we're doing the convenings with the executives and that's fantastic. And then we drive home in our really nice cars. Well, you go to some of these low and moderate income communities at East Indianapolis, where 80% of the violent crime happens on 7 blocks. That's a very different world.
Yes.
Right? And so I think it's going to take some unlikely coalitions. Some of the trusted organizations in these communities are faith-based organizations. I know a lot of folks are loath to work with them, but you got to go with the people that have credibility, and it ain't you. All right. The capital also has to be more patient. I cannot go in with a solution that's evidence-based. So you're the Gates Foundation. I know this works because McKinsey told me it works, right? Okay, it's great. What was the universe that they did that experiment in?
Mm-hmm.
Were these highly educated people? Or were they people that are surrounded by violent crime where a person is being killed every single day in that neighborhood? It's a very different. I have to fix you as a human being first. I have to get your faith restored first. Then we can start talking about innovation. And so one of my big ahas in the last year and a half working in East Indianapolis is that I was that thing that I loathe, which is that underinformed, arrogant, elite. That was me. I didn't know that was me. I thought I was one of the good ones. I'm first generation to go to university in my family. What are you talking about? I'm from Portsmouth, Virginia. Okay. I got cousins in jail right now. What are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
I became that guy. I had no idea. Okay. I really didn't. And people had to shock me into existence. They're like, you are just like them. You just look different. I was like, oh my.
Ooh.
So I've
But you
had,
know what? You need people in your life to tell you
you
that,
do, you absolutely
you
do.
do. And I think that there's some aspect, even if we've, I'm saying in my immediate family, I'm the first one to go to college. And so it does, it makes it very hard to kind of come to terms with the idea that you are upwardly mobile, even though you have humble beginnings. But how does that translate into your day to day now? So, no, I totally see that, because the self reflection piece is more limited now that you have more resources, because you're like, I'm not struggling to survive and figure out where my next paycheck is coming from and things like that. So I think you're right in that there is a sense of empathy that is facilitated only by being in the community, not by research numbers. And while those are helpful and needed, obviously, to get those grants and the money, it really does take people to interact with people.
I agree. And I now see why we can't fix intractable issues. It's the inputs. We are approaching things as if everything's a research project. And once I've proven that it works, I can just put it anywhere and it will work. And if it didn't work, it's that group's fault. And then you look at who's dispensing these grants. These are not people that have the credibility in those communities. And so we're treating people like lab rats and we expect them to behave like beagles. These are two very different things. And so I think it takes what I call bridging people. Like I've been in that elite space for my entire career. And now I'm in a different space. I'm having different conversations and I can like bridge the two. Like, listen, I get you want something to happen in 3 years because that's how it happened. That's how you made your billion. But these are not widgets. These are people. Okay. And it's a very different process to reconstruct a person. It's a very different thing. And so if you're serious about the outcome that you want to achieve, 3 years ain't it. Add a zero to it. It becomes a legacy project, not something you can claim victory in 3 years.
Hmm. So one thing that before you tell us about the things that you've been up to, how do you gain the strength to really speak out? Because I think a lot of times people are very discouraged and get dispirited when they feel like they're, a broken record, and they keep talking about, what increasing belonging, going into communities, and also they get heat for bringing
Mhm.
the topics up.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I've been beat up enough in my life. Don't get me wrong. I've had a pretty wonderful existence. I often call my life an orgy in Disneyland. That's my life, right? Um, but I'm also a Black man in America, right? The saving grace for me is that I'm out of the country almost half the year. So I experience life as a privileged American for the vast majority of my time. Right. And so I have these counterbalances here. I know from whence I've come. I have family members that are still stuck in the muck. Then I kind of develop an ethic gear. Like we're either going to tell each other the truth or we're just going to keep playing. And I'm sick of playing. I'm at the halftime of my life. I've made the adjustments. I'm trying to actually win the game now. And the game isn't what Cordell personally gets, is what the significance that Cordell can rot for the rest of the people. It's not about success, it's about significance.
Hmm,
It outlives
I
the
love that.
person, the successful person. And so, and the crazy thing about that shift from, what I call LinkedIn to real life, when you stop caring about an external narrative and you just want to do good work, is that everything you were after when you were chasing the LinkedIn life, that LinkedIn narrative, you get in spades when you're actually doing the work. It's an insane uh, thing. And so I'm in a season of convergence where the things that I love to do, the things that I was trained to do, and the things I was born to do have converged. And that's I've like tapped into that frequency of creativity and I call it the universal ohm. I'm just in the groove. I'm just there. I'm in it. And things are happening. Things are happening. And you're seeing things you didn't see. You've seen the world differently. And I'm just going to ride this one until my time's up. And the hope is that good things will happen for the people that we're intending to help.
I love that. I loved what you said. It's not about success, it's significance. Because, and I entitled my book Cancel the Filter because that's exactly what you're talking about, is that, and that's why I brought it up, is that when people are putting DEI expert and I'm doing this for the community, but there's like in the background, it's kind of like there's a
Yeah.
personal gain piece to it. And so I'm really glad that you said, really translate what you're saying into real life, help people feel in real life what you are meaning and what you're saying.
Yeah. Because people,
Yeah.
their BS meter is far better than we think it is. Where the only one being BS is us.
Mhm.
And so when you're authentic, they feel like we're making the assumption that we are humans that have these temporary spiritual experiences. What if the reverse is true? What if we're spiritual beings having a temporary human experience?
Hmm.
Wouldn't that explain better why you just sense some things that you can't exactly describe? So I'm trying to embrace this greater notion of my humanity, and it's actually opening up my brain in ways I didn't expect. And I'm asking questions that I deign to ask based on my religious upbringing. Okay. I'm trying to make better sense of this thing called the world and my role in it. And I think if we all got on that path of self-discovery and we're willing to let go of our training, our upbringing, our education, and just like, okay, I'm going to see this with a new set of eyes. I'm going to learn a little different. I'm going to ask different questions. I think it'll get much better results. I really do. And I'm on that path now.
So tell me more about some of the things that you and your team are doing in terms of all these different projects and working towards this greater purpose or significance.
So I call all of this work civic ministry. This idea of renewing or reviving uh, that creative energy, that birth, a really amazing thing, a democratic republic of self-governance. Government for the people, by the people, for the people. And I think, contrary to most thought, especially as people think about American history, because we focus on bad facts, there's also some good facts. Tremendous progress. Remember, nation states number their years in thousands. We are 247 years old. We're just getting started at this thing. But if you compare our 248 years versus another country, you would see a pretty dramatic increase. 60 years ago, so a little before my time, my grandmothers, both of them, were the only thing they have to be, they could be house servants. That's it. Okay. The first time my grandmother voted, my maternal grandmother, was 1966. She was legally able to vote her entire life. But the first time she could vote safely was 1966 because there were federal troops enforcing the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And so we're making the assumption that in 1776, we were the nation that we are now, just different people. We had wigs on. No, the dynamic democracy that we know and love today started in 1966. So we're even younger than we think. And even with that, I think tremendous progress is made. So there's four major parts of civic ministry. You have convenings, just bringing people together. You have content. I think we have a lack of content in this country on civics. And so just reminding people, I think, of the uniqueness of the American story, doing that comparative analysis, doing the deep dives on particular leaders and how they evolved over time. There's the actual global piece to it. This is the festival of the Diaspora. It's in Rio de Janeiro in 45 days that I'm not counting. And we're together leaders from diasporic communities from all over. The unique thing about the festival of the Diaspora is I spend a lot of time in Black Jewish relations. Like I said, I'm a history nerd, and so the greatest generation, wasn't my grandfathers in World War II. It was the Freedom Riders of 1960, 1961.
Mhm.
Okay, they changed the country. And so it was a coalition of people, of civically minded people that said, I know I'm going to personally lose. For those Jewish and Catholic kids from the North, they said, I'm losing face from my family. I may lose limbs, but this is the right thing to do. So I'm going to go and put my body against these windows of these buses when these Klansmen go and try to attack us. I
Mhm.
want the world to see them beating up a white person. Okay. Um, that's far more sacrificial because they didn't have rifles. Okay, they didn't have air cover. They had their bodies. That was it. And they didn't have to do a goddamn thing, by the way.
Mhm.
They could have thought what they thought back home in Michigan. Oh, that's too bad what's happened on TV. They put their bodies on TV. Okay. To me, that makes them greater. So I'm like, how do we recapture that? Right. I want to capture that. And so there's bus tours planned. We're planning one in I call them activation. Planning that in Indiana in April, like a multi-city. We're all on the bus. We have billionaires, we have activists, we have university presidents, we have all types of people just engaged in conversation, going to different cities and hopping out and putting on the show, whatever the show is, whatever the content is, getting back and going to the next city and doing it, but continuing the conversation. How do we get better as a nation? And then the last piece is what I call better governance, helping ensure that our boards reflect our customers. I notice I didn't say society. I'm talking about your customers, because again, the D is self-evident. And so the board has to reflect your customers. Therefore, it will be a diverse board by default. And so I split it across 4 different organizations. You have Indianapolis Foundation doing some of the bus tour work along with Notre Dame. You have at the Aspen Institute Project on Belonging, that's doing a work with professional learning communities of executives. You have the Festival of Diaspora that's leading these global convenings, and then sponsoring education, entrepreneurship education for disadvantaged communities in Colombia and Brazil. And then you have Expectant Advisory, which is essentially a content company for belonging, has an LMS that essentially giving out subscriptions here. Please learn more about your country via that. So I try to keep all these things balanced. I have a great team and these different pieces, but it keeps me busy and full of joy. It really does.
Well, you brought great joy and so much learning and thinking on my part. So this is going to be great, and I can't wait to release this. And so, I think one thing is you are doing such amazing work, and as well as your team, because it takes a village, it takes
Absolutely.
Organizations, and I'm so glad that your team reached out to me. So,
Yeah.
Cordell, thank you so much for being on the
Thank you.
show,
Thank
and I
you,
appreciate you
Stephanie.
so much. You're
Thank you so
amazing.
much. Thank you, and Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year. I am so excited to announce that my book, Cancel the Filter, Realities of a Psychologist, Podcaster, and Working Mother of Color, is now available on Amazon through Kindle or a paperback copy. So get yours today. The link is in the description